want to welcome everybody to Wednesday night meditation. Thank you for being here. I'm going to do a little explanation of something that I've never really talked about before. I mean, it has to do with meditation, and of course I've talked about that, but from this one specific teacher. And then we'll do a meditation kind of based on this principle or this aspect, this way of meditation. And basically, you know, we hear about all the Western teachers, you know, like Thich Nhat Hanh and you know, Bhante Gudarantana and John Kabat-Zinn, and you know, all these meditation teachers that are kind of making a mark for themselves in today's world. And then of course we hear about the teachers of the old and the historic teachers, you know, like the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas in the Buddhist tradition, but also the Hindu tradition as well. And you know, really all the traditions have their meditation practices, and there's many different ways to practice meditation. Basically, we're all trying to you know, quiet the mind and find some peacefulness of mind in our meditation. And that's what brought me to meditation, if I remember correctly. It was so long ago, it's hard to remember, but and so we want that, you know, we want to find that peace of mind, and there's many different ways to do it. And I kind of feel that even if somebody didn't have instructions in meditation, like no instructions, like there's nothing to read or nothing to see on the television or something like that, just somebody in isolation, and they wanted to start meditating, and they did it, if they did it consistency, they would find a technique and kind of go with that technique, and they would certainly benefit by it. And so there's many different ways to teach, to meditate, many different ways to teach it as well. And one of the methods that I ran into recently was by Confucius, the Chinese spiritual teacher, philosopher, Confucius. And I'm not sure, I was going to do some homework on this, and I'm not sure how it unfolded, whether Confucianism started back in his time. I rather doubt it, or if it came about later on. And when I was in China visiting, I was going to all these different Buddhist temples, just to kind of see, you know, what was going on with them and checking them out and stuff. And I walked into one temple and it looked a little bit different, but it looks, you know, there's some similar things. And then when I right in the entryway, when you walk in, there's this fellow standing there, a statue of this fellow with this long mustache, and I asked my interpreter, I said, what is this? And they said, that's Confucius. And so we were in a Confucianism temple, and it was you know, kind of elaborate. It was very interesting. I found it interesting, but I never really thought too much about it, like their practices and that type of thing, and how they go about practicing. But it turns out that Confucius was a very detailed meditation teacher, and I ran into one of his primary practices and his method of teaching it, and it's quite simple, and I thought I would share that with you today. Confucius, he liked to lay things out, and when he taught meditation as an aspect of life. It wasn't just something that you'd only do on the cushion, but I think you'll see here with these 7 steps that it's meant for the cushion, and then it's also meant to take it off the cushion, kind of like our mindfulness practices, you know, in the Buddhist tradition. The very first step in this technique, first of all, is there anybody that doesn't know who Confucius is? The Chinese philosopher Confucius. He's probably most noted for his sayings that would start. This probably happened after his death, but they would always start with Confucius say, and then there would be the saying or something, whatever he would say. And I suppose most of them are made up. I don't know, but Confucius was a philosopher and a teacher, and turns out a meditation teacher. All of this stuff that and I'll try to tell you again later on, but all of this information that I'm telling you now is in I think it's about an 80-page PDF file, a paper that was written, or probably a small book that was written by William Baudry, who is a prolific author and teacher. He's got many, many books out about meditation, and he's a very good writer. And the name of this is Learn How to Meditate, and it's a long PDF file. And if you want a copy, let me know. Otherwise, you can go to William Baudry's website itself and find Learn How to Meditate, and that is www.meditationexpert.com. So that kind of tells you where William Baudry is. He's an expert of meditation. Maybe some of you have probably heard of him. But the very first step that Confucius laid out, and then we will use these steps in our meditation, was to know the mind, which sounds very basic, but we want to know what we're thinking step by step. And what I mean by that is, right now our intention is to sit and listen to me, and then we're going to sit and do some meditation. That is your intention. That's why you showed up here this evening, primarily. So right now you have an opportunity to follow your mind from this moment all the way until infinity. And we don't do that enough. We put our mind on free flow a lot, and so much that it's like a habit. But right now we can watch our thoughts. We can be aware of our thoughts, and this is a very, very key in understanding these steps, particularly the next step, step 2 of this process, which is cessation. And cessation means stopping. So if we want to learn to stop our identification with our thoughts, we have to be able to know when we're thinking, when those thoughts are being brought about. So the whole idea is to know the thoughts, to understand what we're thinking, why we're thinking. And then after we do that for a while, we'll notice that we are able to watch our thoughts, but not be identified with them. So it's an automatic cessation or stopping of the identification of our thoughts. It's a very interesting process. And it sounds like some of the techniques that we've maybe talked about in the past, but this is something that is, I think, really in the heart of meditation, this stopping. A lot of us are brought to meditation to be able to stop something, such as these nagging thoughts that we want to get rid of so that we finally have some peace of mind or something like that. Or we want to be able to stop some kind of proliferation of mind or body, some habit. And we're hoping that meditation will help with this. And it will, of course. Meditation can help with all of these things, but we want to be able to stop certain things in our life, and especially in order to move on to these next steps. So that first step to know the mind, and to understand our thoughts, to understand that we are thinking all the time, and then it leads up to being able to stop those. And that brings us to the third area, which is to be able to watch our thoughts. Now, it sounds like a contradiction with knowing that we're thinking and then stopping them, but to be able to watch our thoughts, this is a form of contemplation, to be able to, the observation of our thoughts. And this is like a way of being self-aware. Now, when we do this, our thoughts change quite rapidly. They know that they're being observed whenever we are observing them. And especially with the other parts of the practice, the knowing of the thoughts or knowing of the mind, the sensation, and then watching the thoughts, at that point, the thoughts are very, very much narrowed down to thoughts that we could say are more prominent, because again, they are being observed, and there's not this wandering of the mind. The mind doesn't go off into the dream state, the awakened dream state, that we often experience. So it's observing the mind through contemplation. The next step is when we're able to watch the thoughts and observe, we can go into this state of samadhi. And a lot of you have probably heard that term. Samadhi is a very serene mental bliss. It's could be likened to single pointed concentration in a jhana practice. It's probably the best way to describe it is mental blissfulness. That's where the mind, the thoughts really begin to fall into the background. They might still keep going, but that doesn't matter. We're not trying to stop the thoughts. We're trying to disengage from our relationship with them. And samadhi is a state that in all traditions, they're trying to reach this place of this deep, it's really a deep peacefulness that is so deep in our practice that it affects our entire life after that. Because we understand that there is a place that we can live that we don't have to be affected by the numerous thoughts and problems and worries and anything that isn't very serene. We don't have to do that. So this samadhi, there's a movie out. I hope if you haven't seen it, I really recommend you watching it, and it's called Samadhi. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on Gaia, probably some other channels. But Samadhi takes about an hour and a half to describe in detail what Samadhi is, and it's very well done. And now, just recently, I think it came out last year, there's a Samadhi 2, which is it's a sequel of that movie. And so check it out if you haven't seen it. Just go to YouTube and sit down and enjoy the movie. It's very, very good. It's all about meditation and samadhi. So samadhi is the fourth step. The fifth step is a physical bliss that occurs, and this we don't hear a lot about, because in science they don't talk about, through the science of meditation, they don't talk about this physical blissness that happens when we become very proficient and our meditation is working, where we feel very light in the body, where we feel we can feel very energetic, we can feel very athletic, we can feel like the body is not a burden, like we're not carrying it around anymore, like it is, like it's something that we are, maybe we might feel like we're young again, like this body can be useful, it can take us places and things like that. So that is the sixth, or the fifth step in this practice. This practice, by the way, is called sensation. I got to make sure I don't get the two words turned around. Sensation contemplation practice. Sensation contemplation practice. Of course, the sensation of the identification with the thoughts, and the contemplation is contemplating our own thoughts, our own mind. And then the sixth step, and this is when we kind of get into the area where this meditation practice that we're doing is benefiting us on the cushion and off the cushion as well. The sixth step is what is called true seeing, where we see the world in such a way that we are very, very moral, that everything that we are thinking, we can see our thoughts when they arise, or maybe even before they arise to a certain extent, that these things are really correct. We are, all of our thoughts are right. We are doing all of the correct things. Our life it seems like it's in order. Everything that we do is, like I said, very, very moral. We don't have any discursive thoughts. We don't have any judgments about others. And it just seems very, very natural. It just happens naturally. When we have a consistent practice of meditation, we go through all these parts of this particular practice, and everything just falls into alignment for us. So it's called true seeing. It's understanding our true nature, who we really are, from the aspect of just understanding life and who we are at the highest level. And then the seventh step of this practice is it's being a perfect being in every way. And Confucius described it as, if we set our mind on doing something, it's easily done. We can easily manifest things. Any intention that we set out doing, we can easily do it. We can set our mind on a subject, and we will achieve it very, very easily. And that's not necessarily a goal to this meditation or any other meditation practice, but it's just a part of the fluation of it. It's just something that happens. Again, this is the seventh step. And Confucius taught these 7 steps in this way. And he constantly reminded people that this doesn't necessarily have to be just for meditation. This can be practices in life. So how are we doing? I'll kind of run over these again in our meditation practices. I was going to mention it again here, but there's a lot of other aspects of this that we could talk about. And if we have time after the meditation, maybe we'll see if there's some other aspects of it can be brought up. And but I'm not going to be doing a lot of talking in this meditation, because the idea of this, I'm not asking anybody to change their meditation practice or anything like that. But if you notice, when I explained all of this, the meditation object was not the breath. And, the meditation object is, the breath has always been my meditation object. But when you think about it, changing our object from the breath to our thoughts is not going to be difficult, because one of the reasons that we use the breath for our meditation object is to take our mind off the thoughts. And then they go to the thoughts, and we go, oh, I'm thinking, I'm going to go back to the breath, just because it's easy for us to do that. But in this meditation, the object, the meditation object, is really the thoughts. It's watching the thoughts so carefully that they kind of like, I don't want to be watched, and they stop. And I think you'll see that happens, and it probably already has happened in other practices for you. But so we will be looking at the thoughts, not letting them get carried away. We're not interested in identifying with them or using them as a tool for what is our future going to look like? What did I do in the past? Not that kind of thing. We're just noticing them, almost like writing them on a chalkboard and not caring about them. And we're ultimately looking for the cessation or the stopping of these thoughts, or I should say the stopping of our identification with them. Make yourself comfortable. Gently close the eyes. Try to make the body as comfortable as you can. Sitting on a cushion, sitting on a chair, it really doesn't matter. We can focus on the body for a few moments. We can adjust the body a little bit if we have to. We should be comfortable enough to feel as if we can stay motionless for 15 or 20 minutes. Sometimes that's not possible. There's 7 steps to this practice, and I will remind you of these steps as we move along here, very gently. And the first step is understanding and knowing our thoughts. This could be knowing the mind, although the thoughts are the most prominent things of the mind. When we're sad, we might have sad thoughts. When we're happy, we might have happy thoughts. And we can notice these things. If I would ask somebody to notice their thoughts, it might not be a new concept to them at all. But very few people can do that as a practice and watch their thoughts for a long period of time and actually really connect with them. But keeping in mind that the thoughts that we have are very much like the breath. They run continuously, just like our breathing in and out all day long, but we don't pay attention to every breath. And we might not even pay attention to very many of our breaths during the day. And it's the same way with thoughts. The first step is to know that we're thinking, to know how powerful our thoughts are. And to be okay with the activity of the mind, the continuation of thoughts. Because as we become more aware, the second step happens naturally, which is the stopping of the thoughts. If we are watching one thought and staying with it, not as a subject, but just as an object, this lessens the chance that this thought will take off into mindless mind chatter, we could call it. So just by observing our thoughts, we're perhaps doing one of the best spiritual practices that we could do. And that is step 3 of this process, is the observation, to watch the thoughts. And this itself turns into a contemplation. Contemplation is where we use the mind and we keep it on a particular object. We don't let it move away from that object. It's a much broader object than, say, focusing on the tip of the nose or focusing on some small aspect of the body. Contemplation is a little bit broader, especially when we talk about contemplating thoughts. When we contemplate our thoughts, we become the master of our thoughts. A thought arises, we might notice the feeling that it brings about. We might notice its duration. We might at first question why it's there, but we don't want to linger on any of those type of judgments and those types of background thoughts. In other words, we don't want to have a thought about the thought itself. Contemplation is not necessarily a thinking process. It's a type of focus. It's a type of mixing the mind with the object rather than just concentration, rather than just pure concentration. So if we realize that we are having a thought about something we're going to be doing tomorrow, if we're contemplating on that, we might realize that at this time we're meditating. That's a useless thought to have. And at that moment, that thought will change into something more prominent. And if we do that again and again, you can imagine the results. Our thinking changes drastically, quickly. As a result of this, the thoughts will stop or fall into the background in such a way that they are no longer able to even be watched. The thoughts won't be able to be seen. And this is a good sign because this means that we're approaching Samadhi, very deep, blissful state. Samadhi is mental easiness, it's peacefulness, it's resting in the present moment. And it's a life-changing experience for everyone. And it can be easily achieved by everyone. As that happens, then we experience physical bliss within the body. The body becomes very easy. When we're meditating, it is painless. We feel as if we could sit for hours. When we're not meditating, it becomes very useful, a tool, a vehicle that we enjoy using. In the sixth step, we become true seers of our own world, of who we are, our own minds, our own thoughts. Our minds become very pure. We become very, very, very moral people. We wouldn't have any trouble remaining just a very, very pure individual in mind and body. And the seventh step is that we have a feeling and a true purpose in life because we become a perfect being. Our manifestations become very easy. We can put our mind to do anything and it happens for us. So we sit, we watch the mind, we watch the thoughts. The thoughts are the most active part of the mind. We can also notice feelings, moods, emotions, these types of things, but primarily thoughts, they're the most active. And we stay with that and see what happens when you do that. Keep your attention on the thoughts. Don't let the mind wander. No need to go back and notice what you were thinking. Just stay with the immediate thought. Open your eyes. Might help to take a nice deep breath of air. Bring yourself back. Wanted to talk a little bit about thoughts after doing a practice like that. If you aren't used to doing this kind of thing, it's probably notice that you're kind of unable to pay attention to some of them, and then all of a sudden you realize that your mind was in the past or the future or something, and like their thoughts were drifting off, and then maybe you notice that, well, I'm supposed to be watching the thoughts, so you started looking at where you were thinking, what you were thinking of, and of course that's another entirely different thought in itself. So we have thoughts on top of thoughts. We have these kind of layers, actually. If we're thinking about a thought that we had, and there's no sense in doing that. There's no reason why we would have to do that in a meditation anyway. Did anybody find this to be strangely different than their normal meditation, or was it about the kind of similar? Yeah, go ahead, Myra.
It had some similarities, but by really focusing on observing the thought, they would just shrink away. They would disappear, like get a little pinpoint. I couldn't even really grab onto them if I wanted to, if I was observing them.
Yeah.
And then I went through a part where it was really kind of deep, but I know the thoughts were just flowing, and it was like hypnagogia, between sleep and awake.
Oh, yeah.
And then I went back to observing the thoughts, and again, they got really little. I couldn't hang on to them, which was interesting. And then I could feel my heartbeat. I could feel the blood going through my face with each heartbeat. I've never felt that before. That was pretty interesting.
Just kind of an opening of awareness or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, thank you. That's a very good observation, that particularly when looking at the thoughts and then having them, just last week I used the analogy of watching like the cat looking for a mouse coming out of the mouse hole, and while the cat's looking, nothing is happening, and then the cat looks away and then the mouse shows up, and it's kind of like that with the
Mm-hmm.
thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
But when we if we notice that we're looking at the thoughts, and it's like thoughts get kind of skittish, they get kind of
Mm-hmm.
shy, they're actually kind of shy, where they turn into something else, or they fade away completely. And it can be being difficult to find any thoughts is a very good sign. That's very good. Searching is a thought, but I think eventually that goes away. That itself will fade away. The whole idea behind this is that we realize how important most of the thoughts are, and we just see them and experience them as just something that is happening, like breathing, and nothing that we really have to pay any attention to, particularly in meditation. When we're tired, like you mentioned, being fatigued. Well, you didn't mention being fatigued, but you had a moment where it felt like you were tired. That's when the thoughts can get really strange. They'll just go anywhere if we're tired, and they just start drifting off. So that can be kind of interesting, but kind of oftentimes, if we're really, really tired, it's difficult to meditate. It's just so difficult to meditate that it's almost a waste of time. But if we can learn to use our meditation to create energy, it helps a lot, and that's very, very worthwhile to do too. Just think of energy, or use the breath as energy, and that type of thing, to bring more energy into the practice. So we need energy to practice meditation. Oftentimes we feel it in the body more than anything, which is good. which is good. Anything else from anybody? Was this was it I guess I'm wondering if it was different because I didn't point out anything about the breath. I didn't say focus on the breath. I didn't say come back to the breath, the typical meditation object, I guess you could say. It was all mind, it was all thoughts, basically, all thoughts.
I liked it. I found it almost easier than focusing on the breath, because normally I kind of fight the thoughts.
Yeah.
And this time the fight wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so it kind of almost gave myself permission to just observe them more than fighting them. And I think it's so neat, Maria, if I said your name correctly, that you said that about feeling the blood in your face, because once I kind of 2/3 of the way into the meditation, after I was able to kind of stop the thoughts altogether, all of a sudden I was able to feel just sensations in my body that I've never really noticed before. Like my head started to feel really light, and I could just turn it just ever so slightly and feel like just things moving that I normally wouldn't feel. And that was just really interesting to me. So I think that's cool.
Yeah.
You brought that up too.
Yeah, I think this type of practice, when we, it's like we're giving ourselves permission to observe the thoughts, not that we want the thoughts to be there, but we're giving ourselves permission to look at them. And if that changes the thoughts and allows them to stop on their own rather than us trying to stop them, it seems like it would be a very good practice that would include the body, because we're not ignoring the body as well. Because when we're asking ourselves to focus just on the breath, which is a part of the body, we're in essence asking ourselves to eliminate the rest of the body, not pay any attention to it. So this kind of practice is, it's kind of an open awareness practice, awareness of the thoughts or the mind, and also the body too. So it's very, very interesting, I think. I think it's got a lot of possibilities for exploration, and I'm going to read into it a little bit more and see how it, and I'll do some I myself anyway, I'm going to practice this throughout the week and see how it feels. The thing that we have to be careful of is that we don't say, well, I don't have time to meditate, but I'm going to watch my thoughts anyway. And then use that as a substitute for our meditation, because it doesn't work that way. We really need that formal practice where we can sit down and really, really do that contemplation and really think in terms of it being a contemplation rather than just a watching of the thoughts. It's more than that. It should be more than that. So hopefully we'll see you next week. We do this every Wednesday, so then we will continue doing so. All right. Thanks again, and love you all. See you next time. Thank you.